There was a year where I couldn't share a deliverable with my new manager without going over it for hours first. The work was done. It was good. But somewhere in my head, a former manager who'd made me feel like nothing I did was ever good enough was still the one reviewing it before he was. I'd left that job. I had a new manager, a reasonable one, who never once suggested my work fell short. And I was still staying up, going over things one more time, bracing for a verdict that wasn't coming from anyone in the room anymore. It took me longer than I'd like to admit to realize the work was good enough. It was the voice telling me it wasn't that needed to change. Welcome back to Your Trauma-Wise Career Guide. I'm your host, Cyndi Bennett. Today we're talking about how to stop one manager's opinion of you from becoming the way you see yourself at work, and how to start telling the difference between what happened in that role and who you actually are as a professional. This one matters because so many people carry a former manager's voice into every room they walk into afterward without realizing that's what's happening. Let's get into it. You might notice it in small moments. You draft an email and rewrite the first line 4 times, trying to guess how it will land before anyone has even read it. You're in a meeting and you have something to add, something you actually know, and you feel yourself scan the room first, looking for a reaction that isn't there anymore, from a person who isn't in the room anymore. You might notice it in how you handle praise. Someone tells you good job on a project, and instead of taking it in, you find yourself waiting for the follow-up, the catch, the but. When it doesn't come, it can feel almost unsettling, like you're missing something, like the compliment can't possibly be the whole message. You might notice it in how long it takes you to send something, a proposal that's been ready for 2 days, sitting in your drafts, because some part of you is still running it past a reviewer who left the company 18 months ago or 8 years ago. Some people notice it in bigger moments too. A new manager gives a completely neutral piece of feedback, something mild, something forgettable, and your whole body responds like it's the beginning of something much worse. Your stomach drops even before you've processed the sentence. You might spend the rest of the day rehearsing what to say if this becomes a pattern. Except it doesn't become a pattern, because this manager isn't that manager. What often happens is that one relationship, especially one where you were micromanaged, dismissed, blamed for things outside your control, or made to feel like your judgment couldn't be trusted, becomes the lens you view every workplace interaction through afterward. Your nervous system learned accurately, based on real experience, that this environment required constant scanning to stay safe. That's what's happening when this shows up now, a system running the safety protocol it built for a good reason. Nervous systems just don't automatically know when the environment has changed. I've heard the same pattern from clients across completely different industries. Someone who left a toxic newsroom and still flinches at track changes in a shared document. Someone who left a controlling nonprofit director and still can't send a message to their current, perfectly reasonable boss without reading it 6 times. Someone who left an agency where every idea was picked apart in front of the team and who now, at a new company that actually values their input, still braces before speaking up in a brainstorm. The job changed. The person scanning for danger didn't get the memo yet. Here's what I would invite you to sit with for a second. The reaction you're having isn't proof that something is wrong with you. It's evidence that you survived something real. Your body learned a genuinely useful skill in an environment that required it. Reading a difficult person accurately, anticipating their moods, adjusting yourself to avoid their fallout. That skill kept you functional, maybe kept your job, maybe kept your paycheck intact during a period when you needed it to. Think about what that actually required of you. You had to become fluent in someone else's moods. You had to learn which version of them showed up on which days and adjust your entire approach based upon cues most people wouldn't even register. That's not a small skill. That's a survival skill built under pressure, and it worked. It got you through. The problem isn't that the skill existed. The problem is that skills like this don't come with an expiration date. They don't know the job ended. They don't know you have a different manager now, a different team, sometimes even a different career entirely. The scanning just keeps running in the background, applying old data to a new situation, treating every new manager like a possible repeat of the one who taught your body to brace. And for some people, this particular manager wasn't the first person whose moods they had to track closely. Sometimes a difficult boss activates something that started long before the job existed. A parent whose reactions were unpredictable. A household where you learned early to read the room before you said anything. If that's true for you, it doesn't mean that the workplace experience wasn't real or significant. It means you're carrying two layers at once, and it can help to know both are there, because the intensity of the reaction often comes from both layers responding together, not just the most recent one. What tends to happen next is something I want to name clearly because it matters. People start to believe the manager's assessment of them was accurate simply because it was loud, it was repeated, and it came from someone with authority over their paycheck and their day-to-day reality. A manager who constantly questions your judgment can leave you questioning your judgment for years in jobs where your judgment was never actually the issue. A manager who acted like nothing was ever good enough can leave you unable to recognize when something actually is good enough because the internal measuring stick got calibrated by someone who never intended to let you meet it. That manager's behavior toward you was information about that manager, about their management style, their own pressures, their own patterns of control or insecurity or whatever was driving it. It was not a verdict of your competence. Those are two different things, and most people carry them as if they're the same thing. So here's the distinction I want to offer you. What happened in that role is data about a specific relationship in a specific environment under specific conditions. It is not a permanent measurement of your worth as a professional. You can hold both of these at once. Something difficult and real happened there, and it doesn't define your capability going forward. The role ended. The data from that role doesn't need to keep running on your operating system in every job after it. This is different from convincing yourself the manager was wrong and moving on quickly. Rushing past it usually doesn't work because the nervous system needs more than a mental argument to recalibrate. It needs new evidence gathered over time in a different environment with different people responding to you differently. What I'm inviting you to consider is a slower kind of proof, one sentence that you can return to. The reactions I'm still having belong to a different job than the one I'm in now. Some people find it useful to notice specifically whose voice is speaking when the self-doubt shows up. Is this actually a reasonable read of the current situation, or is this old manager's voice running on autopilot, responding to a room that no longer exists? That question alone, asked consistently, starts to create some separation. It can also help to look for moments that don't fit the old story. A project that went well without incident. Feedback that was actually just feedback, not a warning sign. A manager who said thank you and meant it. These moments are easy to overlook because they don't confirm what you're braced for. So they don't stand out the way a criticism would. Part of the work is learning to notice them on purpose because they're the evidence your nervous system is waiting for, even if it doesn't know it yet. I'm not going to walk through every piece of this in one episode because this isn't a quick fix. And I don't think you'd trust me if I told you it was. What I can tell you is the general shape of the work, so you know what you're building toward. Part of it involves learning to identify in real time when a reaction belongs to the past rather than the present. That's a specific, learnable skill. It's not about talking yourself out of the feeling. It's about pausing long enough to ask where the feeling is actually coming from before you let it drive the next decision. Part of it involves gathering evidence of your own competence from sources other than that one relationship. Current colleagues, current results, your own track record looked at honestly instead of through the lens of one person's opinion. This matters because the old data doesn't get replaced by ignoring it. It gets replaced by outweighing it over time with new information your nervous system can actually trust. Part of it involves developing a way to check in with reality that doesn't route everything back through that former manager's frame. That might be a trusted colleague you can ask for a gut check, a mentor who knew your work from a different context, or simply a practice pause before you assume the worst about yourself. A few seconds where you ask, what's actually true right now, separate from what used to be true somewhere else. And part of it, for many people, involves understanding where the pattern started, not to relive it, to recognize it clearly enough that it stops running the show without your consent. None of this requires you to decide the manager was a good or bad person. It requires you to notice that their read of you was one read from one person in one set of circumstances, and it doesn't get to be the permanent record. If you're in the middle of this right now, still hearing that voice in meetings that have nothing to do with the person who put you there, what you're experiencing has an explanation, and it isn't a flaw. You built a very good detection system for a genuinely difficult situation. Now you're doing the work of teaching it that the situation changed. That work takes longer than a single episode, and it takes longer than most people expect. And that's not a sign you're doing it wrong. It's a sign you're doing something that actually requires new evidence instead of a quick decision. If this episode names something you're living with and you're ready to work through it with someone who understands both the career side and the nervous system side of it, that's exactly the kind of work I do with clients one-on-one. I invite you to book a free discovery call where we'll look at where you are and whether working together makes sense. You can find the link in the show notes. I would be honored to be part of your journey. Before you go, if you've ever caught yourself still performing for someone who's no longer in the room, you'll want to see the next episode where we go deeper into telling the difference between your instincts and the old wiring in real time, especially when you're facing a decision right now and can't tell which one is talking. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Your Trauma-Wise Career Guide. I'll see you next time. You're not walking this path alone. Every step you take toward a trauma-wise career is an act of courage, and I'm here cheering you on. If today's episode resonated with you, share it with another survivor who needs to hear this message. Together, we're rewriting the rules of career success. Keep rising, keep healing, keep building.